Good morning, DevOps. That's pretty good for a Monday morning. When this deep dive got accepted, I really hoped that it would be scheduled at a Monday morning so I could see your reaction. So my mission is accomplished, so I can go home now. No, we've got a lot of things to discuss today. So let's get started. My name is Gunter Rotsaert. I am a senior systems engineer at ICT Triopsis. I blog at mydeveloperplanet.com, and you can find me on X and Blue Sky by means of these handles. 2 years ago, I also visited DevOps. And this was the DevOps where LangChain4j was introduced, and also AI coding assistants. So when I returned home, I started using them, these AI coding assistants. But it was one big disaster. It didn't compile, I got off-topic responses. And I told to myself, this is nothing for me. So I put it aside for a while. Who has got similar experiences? Okay, quite a few. So after half a year, Stefan Janssen, the founder of DevOps, he introduced the DevOps Genie IntelliJ plugin. And this was quite interesting to me because it also could work with offline models. And due to company policies, I'm not allowed to use cloud models in combination with our software. So I gave a talk last year, a DevOps Tools in Action talk about the DevOps Genie plugin. And when I returned at the office, I searched for a gaming laptop with a GPU, and I installed LM Studio on it, and I ran a model in it. And I was working in a project team with 4 developers, and I asked them to be a pilot group because I wanted to promote the AI coding assistants within the company. And they said, okay, that's fine, let's get started. And after a while, I asked them for their experiences. And one of them was a tester, and he worked mainly with Visual Studio Code, so he did not use it anymore. And he also used an end-to-end testing framework, robot framework, and it's more like not very popular, so the model was not trained well enough in order to give good responses. Another developer, he had some ethical reasons for not using it, because he was concerned about the climate and the energy consumption these models take. So he also did not use it. And the other 2, well, they used it sometimes, but they were not very enthusiastic about it. So I was really disappointed. And so they also told me, they saw that I was disappointed, and they told me, so maybe we are not the right pilot group for you. So try other colleagues. So I searched other colleagues from other teams, and again, after a while, I asked them their experiences. And this was different already. Some of them, they told me that they were using it on a daily basis, and others were not. And again, I was a little bit disappointed because I had found a way for myself to use it that I had good responses. So I was still, again, a little bit disappointed. And then it occurred to me, my first experiences were also not good. I even said that it was nothing for me, so I was not going to use it. But one way or the other, I found a way that it was useful to me. So I started to write down during my daily work, not my hobby projects, but just during my daily work, when I used AI coding assistants and when it gave me good responses and when it did not. And I wrote a couple of blogs about it, and I also used it for creating an internal training for the developers in order to make them more enthusiastic about this. And this is how this talk originated. So especially this first part is about prompting and the responses. And in the second part, we will talk about agentic coding, which is quite new. And we're not going to talk about the vibe coding thing and that sort of things. When we are working on production-grade software, we have higher demands on the quality. So when I'm working on a hobby project, I care less about the unit tests. When it works, it works. So it's my spare time. I'm not going to create a piece of software which needs high quality. But when I'm writing production grade software, I do care about quality and about the unit tests and integration tests because it needs to be maintainable. So this is something entirely different. And also, sometimes we do not want to use the most popular frameworks or libraries. So when you ask a model to generate code which needs interaction with the database, it most likely will choose Hibernate. But I'm a fan of Juke, and Juke is less popular. So how do I ensure that the model will generate code examples or will generate code for me with Juke and not with Hibernate? I do not want Hibernate in my code. And I said before, we're not talking about the vibe coding stuff. Vibe coding is interesting when you want to write proof of concepts, or you want to create a mock-up or something you want to show very quickly to your customer. And also for the interesting things you can see on X or on Blue Sky from disasters with vibe code. People who are not technical, who are going to write software and then get into trouble. Like this guy who suddenly has all kind of things in his database because security was not correctly implemented, and then he has no clue how to fix it. So we still have work. And this guy who has instructed the model not to make database changes without his permission. But it's also something we will see. You can give instructions to a model, but you're not sure that it will follow your instructions. It's more like kind of a best effort. And then the model says, well, sorry, I just violated your instruction, but I did it anyway, so now your database is empty. Bad luck. It's also important to know where the limits lie. Not everything is possible with AI coding assistants. A lot is possible, but it's very important to know where the limit is. This way, you will make much more an efficient way use of the models. In this first part, I will mainly show you examples and how you can change the prompts and how you can ensure that the correct responses are generated. All examples that I used during my daily work. And I did so with the following setup, with IntelliJ and Devoxx Genie plugin, but you can use any AI coding assistant if you like. And I used it with LM Studio and Qwen 2.5 Coder. And these are an offline setup. And why this offline setup? Well, by means of an offline setup, you will hit the limits much more easily than with the online models. The online models are quite comparable to offline ones, but they have a lot of GPUs available, so you will hit the limit anyway, some way, at a certain point. So I can recommend anyone to try and work with these offline models and see where their limits are, and then you will be better prepared when you use the cloud models. And also, generating the responses, it takes some time, and I would like to use this time very good and show you as much as possible. So let's first see how these examples how I did this. And don't worry, I will do a lot of live demonstration during this session. So what you see here on the right, we've got Devoxx Genie plugin, and I will use, in this case, I will use online models because I do not have a GPU in my laptop, so that's the only reason. And I will be using Anthropic as a cloud provider and Claude 4 Sonnet as a model. And what you see here on the left is a Kubernetes YAML file. And I know a little bit about YAML files. And this is the description how a Postgres database should be deployed on a Kubernetes cluster. And you can see here this piece of code. Let's assume that I do not know what this means. Then I can add this to the conversation. And now it's here available. this code snippet. And in Devoxx Genie, I can use utility commands like this explain. These are shortcuts. I will show in a few moments how this works exactly. But with this information, I can enter, and now the request together with this code snippet is sent to Claude. And hopefully it will explain us what's this about. Let's see. Okay, it has recognized that it's a Kubernetes YAML file. That's already good. So we only added this code snippet, but Claude made the assumption that this is a Kubernetes YAML file. So that's already a very good thing. And then it explains us what it sees here. And it says, okay, we've got a minimum guaranteed of resources. The memory, it guarantees 64 megabytes of RAM, and the CPU 250 millicores. And I know a little bit about this Kubernetes YAML file, and I do know that this answer is not correct. It's quite subtle, because the model says it with quite confidence, but these are not megabytes, these are maybe bytes. So maybe the model does not know it, or maybe it does. Let's find out. Are you sure that the memory is defined in megabytes? Now what is happening now is that the previous prompt and response is sent together with this new prompt to the model. So this way it has the context of its previous prompt and the response. And what's it telling us now? I'm right. Of course I am. So it says that it's megabytes. And this explanation of what a megabyte is, this is entirely correct. So this is quite strange, right? So the model does know about megabytes, so why does it not tell us it in the first place? So this is quite strange. Now let's take a look at some settings. Now we've got here these LLM settings. So this chat memory size, that's the amount of previous prompts and responses you can send to the model. And we will also talk about this temperature. And the temperature, I've set it to 0, because when you set it to 0, this means that you want the model to be very deterministic, very factual. And when I'm writing code, I want it to be factual. I do not want it to be creative with syntax and that kind of stuff. And when you set it to a higher value, it will be more creative. And we will see examples of that also. And a high value is in this case 1. If you go beyond 1, then you will go into the insane mode. You cannot know what you will get there. Another interesting thing is this. It's the system prompt. And the system prompt, this is how you want the model to behave. And in this case, I want it to be an expert code assistant for a professional Java developer. And I've added some information about my tech stack. And this really has an influence on the responses of the model. You can play with it with the system prompt, but if you make it empty or you put other information in it, then you will notice this in the responses. So this is very, very important one. And here you see this all these kind of utility commands, like this explain. This expands eventually to break down the code in simple terms to help a junior developer grasp its functionality. And you can create your own. So I've created here some utility commands with extra information. Prompts I often use, and then I do not have to copy paste them from a text file. So I can use these very easily. Okay, some terminology we saw. Okay, the system prompt, this is how you want the model to behave, and you can also add some instructions about it. For example, if you want more technical responses, then you can add this also. The user prompt is what we entered in this dialog and text field, like this /explain. That's the user prompt. And the context is all the information you send to the model. So next to the the user prompt. We also added these code snippets, but you can add classes, or extra files, or documentation, and everything together, that's what we call the context. Of course, we saw this temperature, whether it's more deterministic or more creative. Input-output tokens. Every model, when you take a look at the documentation, it has a certain limit for the input tokens and output tokens. And this actually means the amount of information you can send to the model. And the token is something like 3/4 of a word. So that will limit the amount of data you can send to the model. For example, if you have a very large repository, then most likely it will not fit entirely in the context. So if you would like to send your entire project to the model, then this will probably fail. And then you have to do something different. And the output tokens is the other way around. It's for the response. So the model needs also some memory to generate the response. This is specifically important when you're using offline models, because when you fill up the entire memory with the model and with the context, then you will not have any memory left for the output anymore. All right. We can close this one. First, let's take a look at a class. And this class we will use quite a lot during this first part. It is a piece of code that I saw during a code review. And I thought it was very interesting because it was a junior developer who created this piece of code. And there were quite some things wrong with this piece of code. What it's actually doing, it's processing messages from an MQTT bus. And then it parses the messages, and depending on the message, it sends it to another service where other functionality can do something with these messages. So we've got some class variables here. This main method is only for demonstration purposes. But the main problem was here with this process message. First of all, there's no Java doc, so that might be a problem, maybe not. But when you take a look at this piece of code, I was thinking, oh my god, this is quite difficult, and especially when we scroll to the right. Here, this refactor message, get result instance of hash map, what does that actually mean? So I thought it was quite complicated, and I did not understand it, and it was the end of the day, and I also had did not want to think quite a lot. Okay, this I understood. Okay, we parse the location, and we parse a single data message and a multi-data message. In the context of the project, this made sense. And here at the end of this message, this method, it creates some messages, and then it sends it to a message service. So what I did during the code review, I just did this /explain. I added the whole file to the context, and I asked the model to explain this piece of code. Please help me. And then it gave me some global information first. So it says, okay, it has an initialization block and a main method in this case, and a high-level overview of this processing messages method. And this is all correct. I checked it. This is correct. And then it gives us a detailed breakdown, and it tells for every class variable what's it used for. And there's no documentation in this class, so it sees that this object map, it's used for JSON processing, that's correct, and the logger and the data repository. All this kind of information is correct. We can skip this main method because it's only demo purposes. And then we've got this processing messages method. Let's see what it's telling us about this. And then it sees that it determines whether the message contains single or multi-data. It retrieves the corresponding data from the data repository, it parses the messages, and it stores them in the latest messages and sends it using message service. Okay, we could also have done this, but when my head is full and I do not want to think quite a lot, then This really helps. And if I want more specific information, then I can select this specific piece of code and ask a more detailed explanation of what's, for example, what the hell is this if statement is doing. Sometimes it's quite difficult to see what someone is trying to accomplish. And of course, it's parsing messages. It tells us that it parses the messages based on its type, so that's also correct. So this is a first good explanation, example of how you can use coding assistants. Let it explain the Java code. Another one is regular expressions. Well, I'm not a Perl developer, and I always have to think, oh, what does this actually mean? And I do know some of the syntax. So I do know that this first character, it means the start of a line, and the dollar sign is the end of a line. But I always start doubting about myself on what does this actually mean? And I used to go to a website for that, and then it would expand the whole regular expression, and it would explain piece by piece what it means. So I thought, well, I do not have to use this website anymore. I'm working in my IDE, I see this regular expression, let the model do it. So again, I can use this same /explain, and then it explains us this regular expression. And piece by piece, so 3 digits, that's correct. And this entire explanation is correct. So I use it all the time for regular expressions. It's very powerful, but also the cognitive load can also be very high. And every time I doubt myself, I just ask the model to explain it to me. Now let's make it a little bit more complicated. This is a Spring scheduling cron expression. And this looks quite similar than a regular cron tab expression. There's one difference. Spring added an argument for the seconds. So what will the model do? Now again, explain /explain, and then it seems like it is a good explanation, but here we've got this problem. This specifies the minute. No, it's not. It's a Spring cron expression, and it tells us to make this a valid cron expression. So we asked the model to do something, and we gave as little as information as possible, but it did not recognize this time that this is a Spring cron expression. So it makes some assumption. It's the same when you go to a colleague and you ask a question, the colleague will also make assumptions. And these models work quite similar than your colleague. So what you can do then is quite obvious. You give the model more information. And you tell it, well, it's a Spring scheduling cron expression. And this time, it does know that the first argument are the seconds, and all the other arguments are explained correctly. So the lesson we learn here is that you need to provide sufficient information to the model. And what is sufficient? Well, that's something you need to find out. If you see the response and it's not the correct response, then you have to give it more information. And that's quite difficult. How do you determine whether the response is correct? Then you still need experience, right? And as I said before, I use it quite a lot for reviews. So we can use then also a /review utility command. And this expands to review the selected code and can it be improved or are there any bugs? And we do so by means of this Kubernetes YAML file we saw in the beginning. But the YAML file we saw in the beginning was already an improved one. So this one I took from the Spring Pet Clinic, and when I looked at it, I saw some issues with it. And in the first place, we've got here a hard-coded username and password. So this is a red flag for me. And when we scroll down, Then we see here that there's no resources section. It should be. And this liveness probe and readiness probe, these are quite okay, but not the ones that I would expect when using PostgreSQL. And that's only because I know something about these YAML files. So let's see if the model would give us this information. And yes, it does. So it sees, okay, these resource limits, it's a good practice to set resource limits. So that's nice. And this readiness and liveness probe, okay, you are using TCP socket now, but it only checks whether the port is open. But you should check whether the database is ready or responsive. That's something different. So you should do something different. Then the important one, the secret management. The secrets are correctly referenced, but it might be beneficial to use environment variables for sensitive information. Yes, of course. And then a more general comment about documentation and commons. So that's maybe something the model will always say. But it has also added an improved version. So as you see, it did nothing with the secrets, but it did add the resources section. And of course, I can go to the Kubernetes documentation, and I can search what the syntax is for the resources. But this saves me time, right? Because now the model just told me this is a syntax and this is correct. And the only thing I have to do, I have to think about these values. And that's something the model cannot know. But everything else is correct. And also this liveness probe and this readiness probe, this is also correct. So this saves us time. But the model did nothing with the secrets. So in a follow-up prompt, I ask, okay, the secrets are hard-coded. Now I want you to change this to adhere security best practices. So the model, I prompt something, then the model gives a response, and then it's not exactly what I want. So I can fix it myself, or I can ask the model to fix it. That's always a choice you have. And in this case, it tells us to create a secret first by means of kubectl. So this is a way you can do this. And then it still sets the passwords and the username and password hard-coded, but the references here are correct. So we did quite a good job. So the only thing I had to do in this case was to delete this part on the top. But still, you always have to review the code and think for yourself and evaluate whether it's correct or not. But it saves you time. So what have we learned in this first part? AI models are good at explaining Java code, or any code, or also JavaScript. The more popular, the more correct responses you will get. If you're developing in a niche language, then it might not be very good. You need to provide sufficient context. Like we saw this cron expression, and the only way to find out what sufficient is to experiment with it. But I most of the time I start with small prompts, and then because I'm a bit lazy, and then the model makes some assumptions, and hopefully the model makes the correct assumptions. And otherwise I have to provide more context. And it's good at reviewing. I do not develop quite a lot anymore at the office, but I do a lot of code reviewing and coaching of developers. So I get a lot of code reviews, and I use it all the time for helping me. So we can close this and go to the second part. Javadoc. We saw in this refactor class there was no Javadoc. And we all like to write Javadoc, right? Oh, someone smiles, so that's he likes writing Javadoc very much. No, we do not like Javadoc. We SonarCube needs it, right? So we have to. But this is something that I see quite often. And then in my review comments, before I used AI, I told the developer, I need Javadoc. Just go and fix it yourself. And what I do now is I add the file to the context, and I use this kind of prompts. Write Javadoc for public classes and methods in order that it clearly explains its functionality. And then I put it in the review comment. So this is your Javadoc. And sometimes I tell it, use AI. Okay, what we see here that it did not follow my instruction entirely. So I asked it to do it only for public classes and methods. But it generated the Javadoc for everything. So this is not really a problem, because you can just pick the things that you want. And the Javadoc is correct. I've checked it, so it's entirely correct. And okay, this process message Javadoc, it's a little bit not very it explains not very much, but it is correct. If I want the model to be more elaborate with the Javadoc, then I can ask it. So generate more elaborate Javadoc, then it will be more detailed. And this parameter, it's correct. And when you take a look at these kind of methods, all these parameters and explanation, these are all correct. So what we do at the office is we generate the Javadoc, we read the Javadoc, see whether it's correct, we change a little bit here and there, and then this is also a time saver for us. Generating names. There are two things difficult in computer science, and that's cache invalidation and naming things. So we are bad at naming things. And again, this refactor class, I had no inspiration. That's my only thing was in my head was this needs to be refactored. So I had no inspiration for this refactor class. But we can use the AI for that purpose. So you can just ask the AI, give 3 suggestions for a better class name for the refactor class. And then it comes up with some examples. And these ones are maybe not very good. But we've got 3 examples. And also an explanation why the model thinks that we should call it this class this way. But what I showed you in the beginning, that was the temperature. And the temperature is something we can tune with in order to make the model react more in a creative way. And naming things is something, a creative thing. So I set the temperature to 0.7. And again, it's the same prompt. And then it comes up with 3 other suggestions. No explanation this time. So maybe this was a limit of the model that I was using. But this message processor is not a very bad one. But we use it quite a lot for when we want to name things, variables. Then we ask the model, most of the time, give me something between 5 and 10 suggestions. And often there are very good suggestions in these responses. And sometimes we can pick one, and sometimes it's a combination of the suggestions. But also we use it for naming buttons, for example, when we have a GUI and you have to give the button a name. That's always a thing. And then we also use it. And you can describe the functionality, and then the model comes up with good suggestions. And we are mainly working with Dutch customers. So this also works with Dutch. Now we saw before that the model was not entirely correct when evaluating the cron expression, the spring cron expression. So is it possible to generate a spring cron expression? So I asked it, and this might be a little bit complicated because every 3 days, but not on Sunday, so it should run on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, not on Sunday. And then it generates this cron expression. It's almost correct, but it's also included the Saturday. So now again I have the choice, do I fix this myself manually and remove the Saturday, or am I going to let the model fix it? So I said it will run always on Friday and Saturday, and this not every 3 days, and it should run every 3 days, excluding and skipping Sundays. And then it's creating the same or something which is not correct anymore. And what you see here is that we added a follow-up prompt, and the model is going further away from the solution. And this happens quite a lot. And what you have to do is, then it's often better to start all over anew and create a new chat window in the Devoxx Genie plugin, which clears the history. Because now, when you always try to create these follow-up prompts, then each time the history is sent together with the prompt, and you will see that the model, the responses are going further away from the solution. Then it's better to clear the history. So I cleared the history and start all over again, but the only thing I changed was this piece in the prompt. So Sunday should be skipped instead of but not on Sundays. And this time it creates the correct cron expression. So the wording you choose also has effect on how the model responds. And how do you know? Well, you do not know. You only know by using the model. But do know that the words you use in your prompt do have an effect on the response. Okay, we saw this refactor clause, and we also saw this /review prompt. Now, what shall the model do when it reviews the code itself? So we saw that it could explain the code, but can it find the issues within the code? And when you do so, it gives us some issues. Something about code duplication in this parse methods, maybe a little bit, but not so much. Something about magic strings and numbers, exception handling, null checks, code comments. When I saw this, then I thought, okay, this is some general review comments and not very specific to the class that I added. So this gives us a very general review comments. What I did then is create a new chat window and gave some more clear instructions. And this website, and the link is in the slides. This website has all kind of ready-made prompts, ready-made to be used for software development tasks. And for example, for reviewing, it asks the model, in your review, please consider the code style and adherence to best practices, potential bugs, performance, security, readability, and maintainability. And I want you, for each issue, to explain it, to suggest a fix, and to provide a brief rationale for the suggested change. And you can also add some overall improvements. And this time, and this is quite amazing, the first item it found was the method is quite long and complex, making it difficult to read and understand. And that's exactly what is wrong with this method. And this all has been done with an offline model. So the online models are much better in it than the offline ones. So this is already great. And it tells us also how to do so. You have to break it down into smaller methods. And why? Because they are easier to test, debug, and maintain. So now you know why you should change it. And then it gives us some information, potential bugs or edge cases. This is also correct. We do not check on this refactor message whether it is null. This performance optimization, it gives us another way to parse the date and time, but this is not correct. This is wrong. It changes the functionality. Security, so the method does not validate the input data. This might be, maybe it's done somewhere else, but it's a valid review comment. And also something about the conditional logic, and that's also something we saw. So this is great. So this helps you when reviewing code, or maybe before you provide your own code for review. Then you can ask the model to do a first check, and maybe you can improve your code yourself. But now I would like to have the model split the method up in more manageable methods. So go ahead, do so. And at first sight, this looks quite okay. It's more readable, and it added some null checks. But when you dive into detail, then this is entirely wrong. So this looks very okay, but it changed the functionality. If I had written some unit tests for this piece of code, then all tests would fail. So this is something you need to know. Sometimes for refactoring code, it does not always give good results. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it's just hallucinating and changing the code in something entirely different. But if you have unit tests, you can ask it that the unit test should still work. Okay, what did we learn? The AI models are good at generating Javadoc. Yeah, we do not have to write Javadoc anymore. Generating names, also very good at. And small coding tasks. Specifically small coding tasks, you can use it almost all the time. With this temperature, you can play whether you want it to be more factual or more creative. Especially for these generating names, you can set the temperature to a higher value. You can iterate on previous prompts in order that the model can correct itself, but this does not always work. So here at the bottom, that's the link for the prompt, so it's an easy one to remember. It's a disastrous link, but the prompts are very good. So when you see that the model is going off topic from your prompts, then it's better to clear the history and start all over anew, or just do it yourself. I always intend to start with short prompts, because I do not like to type very much, or I will use these prompts from the prompts that I have added in my utility commands. But when the short prompts do not work, you have to be more explicit. Like we saw with this review prompt, I would like to have it in a specific format. The model will most of the time will just follow your instructions on this one. And always review the responses. It's not always correct. I have some developer now who's using quite a lot the AI model, and is not always reviewing his responses. And then my review comment is, and most of the time, okay, it's nice that you have used AI for this purpose, but please also read it before you submit it to me. And something from local versus cloud. I most of the time use local models. They are more limited than the cloud ones. But what I did notice was that since a couple of months last year, the gap between the offline models and the local models and the cloud ones, it's getting closer to each other. Especially if you have a GPU with large amount of memory, then you can run this 32 billion parameter local models. they are very good, almost as good as the cloud ones. And that's quite amazing because you're running it on less hardware than the cloud ones. The cloud providers, they have these GPUs of 100 gigabytes RAM, and these are quite expensive. I often get the question, are you more productive by using AI? The honest answer is, I do not know. I have the feeling that I am more productive, especially when I have some successes. And the more that you use it, the more successes you have. And when I have some successes, I also get a lot of confidence in the model. Too much confidence in the model. So a couple of weeks ago, I got an error message, and I was too lazy to read it, and because it was in the evening, I had to do something in the evening. I also, again, did not want to think quite a lot, so I put the error message in a prompt, and I asked the model to fix it. And it came up with some suggestions, solutions. And I tried it, and it didn't work. And I said, okay, it didn't work. This doesn't work. I've got a new error message. And after an hour, I got tired of it, and I decided to stop and take a look at the error message myself. And I fixed it manually in 5 minutes. So that's a warning. You do know when to stop, because now I lost some time. And that's something you have to be aware of, that when you have some successes, for some tasks, sometimes it's better to do it yourself or keep thinking yourself. And you see these kind of surveys. This is a survey of GitHub Copilot some years ago, and they claimed that a specific task was 55% faster than developers who didn't use GitHub Copilot. Well, this might be true for a specific task. I have this experience also. For a very specific task, I can be very fast. But this is not an average. On average, I do not believe these numbers. Another survey of research of a couple of months ago was performed by Meter. And what they did was they asked some open source developers who were very well known with the library they were working on to perform a specific task also. And one part could use AI and the other one could not. And the economics forecasts and the machine learning forecasts on the left, they said, okay, you will have a productivity increase of 30 to 50%. That's quite a lot. And they also asked it to the developers themselves. During the study, the developers thought, okay, between 15 and 30%. And after the study, they still thought that they were faster. But what they measured was a decrease in productivity between 0 and 40%. And I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle. And I do think it has some productivity gains, but you have to use it wisely. And of course, you have to wait for the responses. As we will see later on, sometimes you have to wait for half a minute, even with the cloud models. What are you going to do then? You're going to read a mail? You're going to grab a coffee? Then you will have more context switches. And we do not like context switches. We want to stay in our focus. And this will also cost time. And if you're not reading mail or not grabbing a cup of coffee, you might go and disturb your colleagues, and you go talking to them, and then two persons are distracted. So you have to take that into account also. Back to IntelliJ. We did not talk about testing yet. And I used to work in a project where it was mandatory to use Scrum And with Scrum, you have these sprint reviews, sprint demos. And we had a demo at 9 o'clock, and I arrived at the office at 8 o'clock. And I asked the developer who was going to give the demo whether he had enough data in the database, because we had to demonstrate a search functionality, and the results should be paginated. So you have to, when you want to demonstrate this to your customer, you have to have enough data in the database. And he said, no, I do not have that. So I said to him, okay, give me some time, 20 minutes, and I will try to generate the data with AI. And I succeeded, and he could give the demo with good data in the database. And it was not just John Doe. The data was really comprehensive for the customer. So let's see whether we can do something similar. So this is the database schema. This is what I did. I took the database schema, and this is the database schema, in this case from the Spring Pet Clinic. So it's not very complicated, but it has some relations between the different tables. And then you can just add this schema to the prompt, to the context, and you can ask generate test data, which can be inserted by means of SQL commands in the Postgres database. And it will just generate data. And of course, here we have John Doe. But these specialties, like cardiology, surgery, radiology, this quite okay data for the pet clinic. And we've got a cat and a dog, and some information about owners. So can we run this? Yeah, here it is. So this is a data SQL file, and this one is executed when the database starts. So we start the Postgres database. Yes, and then Maven Spring Boot run. And I did not change anything to this SQL commands. And the pet clinic, find the owners, and we've got some data in the database. So this is a very good thing. So you can use it for your tests, for test data generation. So this works quite well. We can shut it down, and we shut down the database. Now this was only a limited set of data, but can we also create more interesting information, more large data set? So I tried this also, and I said, okay, I want at least 5 pets, 30 owners, 10 different types of pets, and each owner must have at least 1 pet, and some owners have more than 1 pet. Then it generates some data, so 5 pets, 10 different types of pets, and when you count them, there are 9. So who said I cannot count? And then it says, insert 30 owners with at least 1 pet, and we see here that the data is not good. Owner 1, last name 1, and after 2 inserts, it says, do it yourself. So what can we do now? Now the solution is to split it up in smaller tasks. When a task is too large, then you just split it up in smaller tasks. And so I first started with okay, generate just the different types of pets, and then it will generate this time 10 types of pets, and generate 30 owners. And I'm generating the reference data now, so the 30 owners are generated. And this is these are quite okay data. It's something your customer, when you're developing a Spring Pet Clinic, the customer will recognize. And then when I generated when I generated all the reference data, we need to assign the owners to a pet. So all the generated data added to the prompt. And this also worked quite okay, but now we've got to relationships. And I made a mistake here. So what I did not do, I did not retrieve the data from the database after inserting. So the IDs are missing, and what you see here is that the model will make some assumptions about the IDs. And for the types, we've got 10 types. This is correct. You can see this here. But for the owners, it starts counting and counting and counting and counting, and it keeps on counting. So I should have inserted the data first in the database, and then the response I should have added to the prompt. Then it would know the IDs, and then it would be able to generate the correct data. And during our demo, before the demo, we just did something like this. We just pasted the information. Oh, we started the database. Yes, and we started application, and we could demonstrate this functionality. And if I would not have had AI, I was not able to do it in such a short time limit. And we could not have demonstrated it to the customer. Now this is quite a good demo. Of build failure. That's not possible. It looks like, well, okay, it looks like a real demo. Why? Oh, what the heck? Okay, never mind. You believe me when I say so that it worked. It worked yesterday. Worked on my machine. Now. Okay, another thing, unit tests. Just show another project. This is a Spring Boot. This was a proof of concept that I made. I wanted to see whether I could create a Spring Boot application by means of AI, just like I would have written it manually. So this is an example of that, and I can use this now for demo. It's just a simple application. It can create a CRUD application for customers, and it can retrieve the customers. So it's not very complex, but it was more for me like a test. Can I force the AI to write it something that I could have written myself? And it's almost for 95% it succeeded. So this is this customer's controller. Now I shut down IntelliJ. That's not good. This one, yes. Go ahead. Okay, this what I did. We've got the utility command /test, and this just expands to write a unit test for this code using JUnit. And this, when you use this this kind of prompt, then this will just generate a more general test, nothing very specific, not a very good test also. But I created a new one, a test controller utility command, and then I added, okay, I want you to use WebMVC test, mock MVC, and I want you to use SRJ assertions. And then it generates a test for us. And this test, when you look at it like this way, then it looks quite okay. It can be improved, but it's not not wrong. But there's something we can use to verify the quality of the tests, and that's mutation tests. And that's also something we use quite a lot. And this will tell you your real test coverage. So when you have your normal test coverage, it might say it's 100%, but a mutation test will change pieces in your code, and if your tests are still successful, then the mutant survived, and that tells you something about the quality of your tests. And when you take a look at that, here on the top, we've got our controller, and the line coverage is 100%, and the mutation coverage is 86%. So we have to fix something in the test, but 86% is quite good. I've seen worse things with using manual tests. So this is quite good. Okay, then we also have a repository which also has the same similar CRUD operations, but I'm using Juke for inserting the data in the database. So I was wondering, can I create a test which uses Juke tests and test containers, because I want my database test to be executed against a real database. Again, SRJ and, if necessary, Mockito, but I do not expect that. And what you see here is that it ignored some of my instructions, so it uses JDBC tests. And that might be that the model does not know anything about Juke tests, or it just ignores my instruction. But this container is correct. And also, when you take a look at these tests, they are quite okay. The only thing what's wrong with this one is that the tests make assumptions about data being present in the database. And it just added here some code comment. So do it yourself if it's necessary, but the model knows that it's necessary. So I asked it to fix it, and I also added Maven dependencies myself, and I asked it to ensure that the preconditions can be met. And then it creates an entirely different test which is not correct anymore. This is again a case where the model is going away from the solution instead of providing me the solution. So what I did, I just ignored this and I just added this snippet myself. It was not very difficult to do so. And again, the mutation tests, and we've got here the repository. The test had a test coverage of 94% and a mutation test coverage of 100%. And this is also, again, very good. So the AI models are very helpful for generating the unit tests, so you can use them for this purpose. Okay, what have we learned? It's good at generating test data, especially when you want it to also to be more creative. You can play with this temperature, but it's very good at generating test data. When the task is too large, when you see that the model is not responding in a good way, or that, well, you know often whether a task is complex, then split it up in smaller tasks and do every smaller tasks separately from each other, and then combine the responses yourself. And it's good at generating unit tests. Our developers use it quite a lot for generating unit tests. Provide context, so maybe it's a good thing to do to add your POM also to the context in order that it knows your unit test tech stack. And don't be afraid to do a manual intervention. What you also can do is to fix something yourself and then ask the model to continue from that point forward on. So that's also possible. Do not always let the model do all your work. You still have to do something. Okay, now this is my favorite part. Everything we saw up till now were coding examples, generating Javadoc, generating unit tests, test data. But you can use AI also for other things. For example, for architecture questions. So I'm starting a new project, and the project will be a CRUD application for managing my music collection. Some people might still have a music collection. Well, I have some CDs still. But which architecture style should I use? So let's ask it. So now I'm going to ask Claude to give me some advice. So now Claude is thinking. And do be aware that I still have my system prompt also sent to Claude. And in my system prompt, of course, some of my tech stack is added. So maybe I guide it a little bit in what I would like to have. But it's a great project, thank you. And for a CRUD application managing a music collection, I'd recommend a layered architecture. Okay, that's a good choice. With domain-driven design elements, maybe, maybe not. And simplicity, why? Maintainability, testability, and Spring Boot alignment. This is probably because I added in my system prompt that I would like to work with Spring Boot. And some architectural decisions and why you should do so. So this is like asking your colleague what architecture style should we use. You can use also the AI for that purpose. So that's a little bit a different approach of using AI. And some questions to refine the architecture. Great. But then a real life question, and that's the following. My manager wants me to use microservices. And what's your opinion about this with strong arguments? So this sometimes happens. Or sales. We need to do something with microservices. Why? Well, because we want to sell something. We want to sell something complicated. And as you see, it takes some time to wait for the response, but nevertheless, it's quite fast. Let's see what it comes up with. My strong recommendation: avoid microservices for this project. And then some arguments. It violates the monolith first principle. It's correct. Complexity versus business value. Microservices introduce distributed system complexity. Service discovery, distributed transactions. This is all correct, right? The team size reality. Data consistency nightmare. Now, if this does not convince your manager or sales. Performance anti-pattern, testing complexity, and so on, and so on. So these are good arguments for to take into account. And then it says, okay, just start with a monolith, which is maybe the best thing to do in this case. And later on, you have a migration path. If you use the monolith architecture, you can have a migration path to microservices if needed. And what to tell your manager? This is new. I practiced this a couple of times, but the model comes not always gives you the same response. So sometimes it surprises you. Okay, I recommend we start with a modular monolith following microservices principles. Blah blah blah. This gives us 80% of the benefits with 20% of the complexity, and we can extract it later. And this approach is endorsed by ThoughtWorks, Netflix, and Amazon's own best practices. Now, this must be convincing, right? And would you like me to help you build a compelling case for the monolith approach, or show how to structure it for easy future extraction if truly needed? Well, we can continue this kind of conversation with the model. If I ask it now, I can do so. We have time. Show me how to structure it, and then it will probably generate a lot of code for us. And this is something we can use as a starting point for our application. Thinking. Now this was more difficult than I thought. Okay, here we go. Okay, as you can see, it generated the database schema. It has generated the controller and blah blah blah, and quite a lot of code it has generated for us. Now, I have no idea whether this compiles. Well, probably it won't. But now you have to copy paste this in a Git repository and see for yourself whether this works. And in the second part of this deep dive, we will see a solution for this. Another thing which is quite useful to use AI for is when you have to make decisions about libraries you want to use. And as I said before, you have the choice between Hibernate and Juke for database interaction. But what are the advantages, disadvantages, and what library should I use? You can also ask it the model. And then you got the cons and the cons and the pros, and then it's up to you what you will choose. But do fact check what the model is telling you, because once I trusted the model too much, and I went to a colleague and I gave him a great explanation of why we should use dependency A, and he said it's not true what you're telling me. So I missed it. I had to fact check the response. But if you know if you have some experience and you know something about, in this case, Hibernate and Juke, then you can evaluate it much better. In this case, for Hibernate, ORM abstraction, database agnostic, mature ecosystem, and so on. Disadvantages, performance overhead, complex queries. This seems to be quite okay. And Juke, it's type safe SQL, full SQL power, code generation, and disadvantages. Okay, you have database coupling, but that is not always a disadvantage. For some cases, you need a commercial license, so you can use the AI to help you make decisions. And then the last one is when you need to make a planning. So in this case, my product owner wants me to develop an interface with an external system, and the external system sends messages to an MQTT topic, which I need to process and generate a plan for developing this, and which Jira tasks should I create. So this is also often a question we get. So we need to build something, and then product owner, Scrum Master, or whatever, they ask us, okay, split this in tasks and put it on a Jira board. And I need to report on that one. And that's also a little bit boring task, right? So AI can help us with that. Let's take a look. A high-level architecture plan, great. And it will split it up in specific tasks. And these, when you take a look at these tasks, these are quite good, and you can use them. And even better, this is my favorite one. It makes estimates for us. So now we can skip refinement sessions, we can skip sprint planning sessions, and we just ask the AI, and then you say to your product owner, it's 3 story points. Now, this is a time saver, right? So this may be the most important lesson of today. Lessons learned. It's also a sparring partner for architecture, design, choice of technology, and for creating a plan. But for the first ones, always fact check. Other use cases which I did not demonstrate, but you can use them also for AI coding assistant. Generating Docker Compose files, generating OpenAPI specs. This works remarkably good, I must say. Plant2ML, but for Plant2ML diagrams, the models have difficulties with the relations, with adding relationships. Not only the offline models, also the cloud models, it's not always very good. Generating features, but do review the code. And you can find more information on or more examples on my GitHub page. Coffee break. Or are there any questions up till now? A question.
Yes, I have a question. What you just showed with story points, architecture, do you use a low temperature or a high temperature?
Okay, the question is, when I use these questions about architecture and all that kind of stuff, do I use a low temperature or a high temperature? Most of the time I have it on a low temperature. And I give you another example, which I had a couple of weeks ago. Then I need to create an architecture for a quote for a customer, and the customer, he made the specifications document of 40 pages, and I read the entire specification and I drew my architecture, and then I added the specification document, which was in Dutch, to a local model, and I asked it generate an architecture with this. And it came up with the same architecture, or 95% the same architecture as I had created. And it even gave me an idea of changing my architecture. And then I asked it to generate the plant UML diagram for it. And this was also successful besides the relationships. So, other questions? Yes? Okay, the question is on which hardware and software we are running our local models. Well, in the first place, I just started low profile with a gaming laptop. It had 12 gigabytes of RAM, but since the beginning of December, we have bought 48 gigabytes of GPU, and we run it with Olama as inference engine and Qwen 3. The 32 billion parameter models. And this comes very close to the online models. So it works very well. Other questions? No? Okay, then we've got a coffee break. And let's see, what time is it? We'll start at 11:15 again. 11:15. Okay, welcome back. In this second part, we are going to talk about agentic coding. But before we start, I must warn you, because everything you're going to see here comes with serious risks. And if you intend to leave early because you're so enthusiastic about what you've seen here and you want to tell your colleagues about it, or if you're watching the video and you want to skip some parts, please do not skip the last part, because then we're going to talk about the risks. And I do not want to be responsible for messing up your system. Now, in the first part, we mainly talked about prompting and how to instruct the model in order to get better responses. And we also talked about the context and adding files to the context. But sometimes the data you want to send to the model is too big for the context. And this can be solved by means of retrieval augmented generation, RAG. And how does this work? Well, first you send your large documents, large Git repositories, in this case to Devoxx Genie, and what Devoxx Genie will do is it will split up all the files, all the documents in pieces, in chunks. And these chunks will be transformed into numbers, into vectors. And these will be stored in a vector database. And if you are prompting, then you send your prompt to the plugin. And also this prompt will be transformed into a vector, into numbers. And by means of similarity search, the most relevant parts of the documents or your code will be taken out of the vector database, and this information will be sent together with the prompt to the model. And based on that information, the model will generate its response and respond it to the user. So this is kind of some kind of pre-filtering what takes place in order to prevent that the model is that the data does not fit in the context. Now, a fun fact about RAG is that the inventor of RAG, he said that they would have chosen a different name for RAG if they knew it was going to be popular. So Patrick Lewis said, we always planned to have a nicer sounding name, but no one had a better idea. And we saw in the first part, they could have used AI for that. Now let's assume the following use case. We saw that at the end, a very large part of code had been generated. Now, if I would like to check whether this compiles, then I have to copy paste everything from the response window into the code repository. Now let's assume that this was done automatically. And when all the code changes are applied, that the Maven build is executed. And when all tests are green, git commit push will happen. So then we could sit back and relax, see everything happen on our screen, and then we only have to instruct our colleague to do a code review. That would be a great use case, right? We only have to drink coffee then. Now that is possible by means of agents. And that's the main topic of this conference, the rise of the agents. But before we continue, we need to know what an agent is. And Simon Willison, he blogs on a daily basis about AI, and it's definitely someone you need to follow. He gathers all kinds of definitions of agents. And this one is quite good. Agents are models using tools in a loop. So we got our model, and when it's able to use tools in one way or the other, and it can do it iteratively, then you've got an agent. And the next one is also applicable. An AI agent is a large language model racking its environment in a loop. And this is something we will talk about when we're talking about the risks. And a couple of weeks ago, Simon did his ultimate definition of an agent, and that's this one. A large language model agent runs tools in a loop to achieve a goal. Great. So what do we need? We need tools. And in order to understand what is happening, we need to take a look at the OpenAI API specification. The OpenAI AI specification. So this is what happens when we send a prompt to the model. This is the message we are sending, and in this case, it's the prompt, what Dell products do you have under $50 in electronics? Our model does not have any knowledge about our product catalog. But you also see on line 6, this tools section. And we've got one tool, and that's the search products tool. And it also has a description. Search the product catalog by various criteria and use this whenever a customer asks about product availability, pricing, or specs. And it also takes some parameters. For example, the query parameter, a category, and a max price. So the model does not have any knowledge about our product catalog and cannot answer our question. Otherwise, it would hallucinate. It will answer. It will give a response, but it will give a wrong response. When it receives such a prompt, then it will take a look at the tools. And in this case, it finds a tool, the search products tools, and it asks the requester to invoke it. And this will happen with this response. And as the assistant, I ask you to invoke the tool, the search products tool, with query Dell, category electronics, and the max price 50. And then the tool will give the information to the model, and then when the model has enough information, it will give the response. And this is different than what I told you about RAG. With RAG, some pre-filtering takes place, and it's based on similarity search. But now, the model will ask you for extra information. So that's far more efficient. And when we have tools, then we need to interface with these tools. And when everyone is going to write tools, then everyone will define its own API, and that this would become one big mess. So I think at the end of last year, Anthropic, the creators of the Claude Sonnet models, they created the model context protocol for this purpose. And this is a standardized API for model tool interaction. So this simplifies quite a lot already. Now, what does this mean for our use case, for our setup? Now, we've got Devoxx Genie with IntelliJ, and I have some local MCP servers tools running, and they're talking with Devoxx Genie by means of standard I/O. But it's also possible to have remote tools living on the internet, and they will talk, of course, over HTTP, and this can also be streaming HTTP. And of course, we've got our model, which also talks over HTTP. Me as a user, I prompt in Devoxx Genie. Devoxx Genie forwards this prompt to the model, and the model decides I'm missing information. But there's a tool which can provide me this information. Then it sends a request to Devoxx Genie. Devoxx Genie forwards this to the MCP server. This MCP server executes its task and sends a response back. Devoxx Genie forwards this again, and then the tool can decide whether it has enough information or not. And when it does not have information, not enough information, it can invoke another tool or the same tool, and this is when we've got this loop. But when it decides I've got enough information to send my final response, then it will do so, and it will send it to the happy user. So what do we need in order to accomplish this? Well, we need an inference engine, something that is able to run models with tool support. And when you're using the cloud providers, it's none of your concern. But when you're using offline models, then you need something like LM Studio or Ollama with tool support. You also need a model with tool support. Not all models support tools. When you send a request to a model which is able to work with tools, then you will get an exception. You need some kind of an orchestrator. In this case, that's Devoxx Genie, who's sitting in the middle and who's transferring all this communication to the tools and to the model and to the user. And of course, we need tools. And let's take a look at the first tool. And this is the Java file system MCP server. And this is a pet project of Stefan, the founder of Devoxx. So let's take a look at that. I cloned the repository. And here in the settings, we've got here the MCP settings. And let's take a look at the configuration. You give it a name. You define the transport type, and this information is present in the documentation of the MCP server you are running. So we've got here the options for standard I/O and HTTP. In this case, it's standard I/O. You have to provide the full path to the command in order to run the tool. In this case, it's a Java application, so Java. And some arguments, and also these are documented. And in this case, it's just a jar file, and I have cloned the repository and built the jar file myself. Then I can press test connection and fetch tools, and 9 tools are found. And let's take a look at them. We've got here an edit file tool and a description. So these are exactly the same things we saw in this curl command from before, from Dell product catalog. So this information is sent to the model. We've got the fetch web page, which is interesting. Read file, list directories, search files, and so on. And execute bash, and this is also an interesting one. Use with caution, as some commands may have system-wide effects. Do not use remove or delete commands in capital letters. Now you can hope that the model will follow these instructions. I don't think so. And a write file. Now here at the top, you can enable the MCP support but also this one, enable approval required. This is the human in the loop. So today I will keep this enabled. If you disable it, you're in the YOLO mode, and it's up to you what's going to happen on your system. But it gives us insight in how many times the model is requesting for extra information. So it's for demo purposes, it's absolutely good. And also to be on the safe side, it's definitely good. On the right bottom, you can also see here the tools. You can enable, disable MCP servers, and you can also show all the tools available. And this button in the right corner, it gives you some log information. This is when you want to debug information when something is wrong with your MCP, with your MCP server. Let's see what's going to happen when we ask, show me all files in this repository. So now the request is sent to Claude, and Claude does not have any knowledge about the repository I am in. So it wants us to invoke a tool, the list directory tool, and with the path to my repository. So approve. Again, list directory. So now it's traversing through the directory tree. So we have to click a few times now. If I do not have this approval enabled, then everything will go faster, of course. But it could also do the execute bash, of course. So what I do, I just take a look at this, which tool is executed. So this list directory tool is not so harmful. It can only retrieve information. So now it's traversing through the directory. Now it's in the tools. So we've got here on the left side, it's in the tools directory now. And now it's going to the resources directory. And so on and so on. Meta-inf. So this can be quite annoying also. Click, 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 test. And the danger with this kind of pop-ups is that you will just click anyway. You don't read it anymore. And oh, it deleted my home directory. Almost there. Almost there. We're in the file system, test file system. Tools, that's the last one. It probably will also scan the target directory. Great. And what you see here on the right is all the activity which has taken place. So you can see here what the model also was thinking. So I'll help you to explore the repository structure, and then it will invoke all the commands, and you can follow everything what has happened here also. So that's a nice thing. But what do we see now? When we take a look at the response, it has scanned our repository, and this is entirely correct, as you can see. All these files, we can see here on the left, all the files are correct. So this is already great, right? Now our model has knowledge about our repository. And it gives a summary of our target directory, so that's also nice. Now, can we create a directory? Create the directory temp in this repository. Now, I have to explicitly mention in this repository. If I leave out these 3 words, then the model will create the directory in my home directory. And when I first started with this, I did not have this approval dialog. It took me quite some time before I noticed that it actually worked, but it was all kind of stuff doing in my home directory. And that's the moment I told to myself, okay, I'm not going to continue with this. First, we need this approval dialog because it's becoming too risky. Okay, create a directory. Now it's executing the create directory tool, and indeed in my repository. Go ahead. And it's here on the left, temp directory. Great. Now create a temp.txt in the temp directory. Now it's going to use the write file tool, and it's going to create a temp.txt file with some dummy content. And here it is. So this is awesome, right? Because now our model knows things about our repository. It can create files, it can create directories, it can edit files. So this will make it happen that we do not have to copy paste any information anymore. Now the model is able to do things in our repository without our intervention, except clicking the approve button. So this is really, really, really awesome. And to be honest, I do not use this Java file system MCP server. So sorry, Stefan. But we did saw this create bash tool. And I was thinking, okay, if I have an MCP server like a wrapper around my terminal, then it can also create directories and edit files, and it can do a lot more things. So it will have access to every command on my system. So then I would have made the model capabilities huge. So I searched for shell MCP servers, and there are quite a lot of them, and most of them I could not install, or I had to install other dependencies and it was difficult. And I found one, and it's this one, the shell MCP server. It has one tool, the execute command tool, and it takes one argument, just a command. And it returns the executed command, the output, so the combined standard out and standard error output, and the return code. So if the command fails, then the model will receive this information and then it can fix it, or it can invoke another tool, or maybe the tool is not installed and it can even instruct to install the tool. But also this author, he knows the risks. So he says, okay, I'm providing you this MCP server, and use it with caution and implement appropriate security measures to prevent unauthorized or dangerous command execution. So I give you this MCP server and it's up to you. Now let's see how this works. Let's take a look. The settings, we have to enable it again. I'm going to disable this one. And the shell MCP server, again, it's a local MCP server communicating over standard I/O. This time it's a Python script, and just a module, the MCP server shell module. Test connection and fetch tools. And one tool found, that's expected. And it's this execute command tool. Great. And we're going now to a different project. Again, to the project we saw before. This Spring Boot application I generated entirely with AI. And we've got here this customers controller. And I would like to write a test for that. So let's open DevOps Genie. I add the customers controller to the context. And then I've got this utility command for a test controller, which instructs to use WebMVC test, SRJ, and so on, and create the test in this repository. Go. So, what's he doing now? Now executing command, and it's going to check whether I have a test directory. I do not have a test directory yet. And now it's scanning the repository because it's lacking information. And it's going to create So make dir our test directory. So and this one is interesting because our customer controller has dependencies on other classes which I did not include in the context myself. But it needs information from these classes and in order to create a good test. And now it's instructing me to give information about the other classes. So this is entirely different than this rag. So now the model is asking the missing information. So this is very cool. Also the customer service. It needs the customer service to create the test. And I've used an OpenAPI generator, and it needs also this domain module for that. Maybe it was not successful. And what it's doing now it's, well, probably the previous command was not successful because it's trying to retrieve the information of this customer Java class, and maybe the response was not successful. So it tries another way to get the information. So most of the time when it takes a little bit longer, now is creating the test. Or at least I do hope so. Let's see. These have been created already. Okay, here we are. Now he's outputting our customer's controller test.java. And here is our test. What you're going to do now? Oh, he's probably checking whether it was successful. Maybe he did not have received that information. And now we can see our test here. And when we take a look at this test, it looks quite okay. When we scan it, and let's see what it responded. I've created a test, use JUnit 5, mock MVC, SOJ, blah blah blah, and some test organization. So it has created tests for all the CRUD operations. Now, does the test run? Let's see, because we do not believe what the AI is saying. All tests green. That's a good start, but we are not satisfied with that. We also want to see whether the mutation tests are good. And I've added the mutation test plugin. And normally seen with a larger project, this can take some time, but this is not a very large project, so not so many mutants will be executed. So now it's executing the mutation tests. And he's done. And it's here in the pit reports. Index.html and open with Firefox, please. Yes. So our controller has 100% line coverage. That's really good. And a 93% mutation coverage. So let's take a look. So in this case, for this method, when the response is replaced with null value, then the tests succeed. But this is something we can fix ourselves easily, or we can ask the AI to do so, but in this case I would say fix it yourself. So this is awesome, right? Because we have done nothing except approving the button, clicking the approve button, and it's successful. But there's a problem, because what you saw here is IntelliJ already tells us so. It's using Mockbean, and Mockbean is deprecated. So why did the model use Mockbean? Well, that's a problem because all these models have some kind of cutoff date. They are trained up till a certain date. And our libraries, our frameworks, they are receiving updates. And the model has no knowledge about these updates. And it might not be a problem, but it is a problem when it's not backwards compatible, for example. Or in this case, I'm creating a new controller test. I do not want it to use Mockbean because it's deprecated. Use Mockito Bean. And Claude Sonnet 4, which I'm using here, it has a cutoff date of January 2025. So Mockbean was already deprecated, but maybe it did not take it into the training data, but for some reason it does not know anything about Mockito Bean. But there's a solution for that. And that's the Context 7 MCP server. And what's that? Context 7 is just a website, and you can search for libraries here. And for example, Spring Boot. And then you get all kind of documentation for Spring Boot. And when I click it, then I can search for specific topics. And what you see here is that this documentation is suitable for models. You can also say, okay, all this documentation is on the web, so go to the website and fetch the web page. But then this information is all cluttered with these HTML tags and JavaScript and all kind of things which are not applicable to the documentation itself. And that will make it more difficult for the model. So this documentation is created in order that the models can do something with it. And when I search for this WebMVC test, then I will get all the documentation for the WebMVC test. And as you can see here, it has 10,000 tokens. It will limit the documentation up to 10,000 tokens, and we will see in a moment that with MCP server, it will do so even with 3,000 tokens. This costs money, right? Tokens are money when you're using a cloud provider. So it's also good to keep it a little bit in a limit. Unless you have the credit card of your boss, then you go ahead. Okay, let's see if we can do something with this. We're going to delete this test. We can close this one. And we go to the settings again. And we're going to configure the Context 7 MCP server. This is also a local MCP server, but local MCP server which will access the internet. So it's locally running, but information is sent over the internet. And it's an npm module, and with npx you can run the npm module without installing it actually. Test connection and fetch tools. It has two tools. Which ones? First of all, it has a resolve library ID tool. And all the documentation on the Context 7 website, all the documentation has a specific ID, and first the model needs to retrieve this ID, and then it can ask for the real documentation. So that's what the description says. You must call this tool first, or you have to provide the ID yourself if you know the ID. And then the second tool is to get library docs, and it will fetch us the up-to-date documentation for a library, and so on. A new chat window. Again, test controller. Create the test in this repository. I am using Spring Boot 3.5. I could also add my POM, but in this case I'm telling the model which version I'm using. Do not use deprecated functionality. And we have to add our customers controller. And go. This is already good because the model does not know anything about Spring Boot 3.5, so it's asking to invoke the resolve library ID tool. And it will now retrieve the library docs on the topic, and here Spring Boot 3.5.3, and with the topic Web MVC test, mock MVC, and testing, and the number of tokens 3000. So you are dependent, of course, of context 7 and the documentation which is available there. And now it will start all over again with everything we saw before. Now it's going to create a test. And I also have to add do not use deprecated functionality, otherwise it will still use mockbean for one reason. I do not know why. But I also tested it with the disabled MCP context 7 MCP server, and then it also still uses mockbean. But this is something you could add in your system prompt, for example. Now it will create our customers controller test. Cool. And now it has used Mockito Bean. This is great, right? Because we want to use update libraries, and we want to use update documentation. And now we are not dependent on a model which has been trained on certain data. Let's see if this test even runs. I do hope so. All tests green. So this is a great enhancement of the model. Absolutely. Okay, these are in the slides and with the links. So the slides are available in the Devox app. Another one, I told you I'm a fan of Juke, and the models are not trained very well on Juke, so I would like to enhance the models also with information about Juke. And of course, the Juke documentation is also present in context 7, but I would like to show you this specific MCP server because it's a remote server. And this MCP server is created by Simon Martinelli, and I just trust him. So, and this is a Juke MCP server. It's a wrapper around the Juke documentation. And this has a transport type HTTP, and we just have to provide the URL to the MCP server. Let's see what he has created. He has created 6 tools, and it all has some information about different parts of the Juke documentation. And let's see if it will use this tool. Give me some examples of Juke insert statements, something like that. And as you see now, it's retrieving this information because it does not have enough information to provide the examples itself. And now it is invoking all these tools in order to retrieve all the documentation. Query type get query DSL reference. So it will scan all the different parts of the documentation. And this server is running not on my laptop, but actually on the internet. It takes a while now. So it's probably generating its response. Come on, Claude. You can do it. Great. As you can see, all these examples have been generated now, and it's taken from the Juke documentation, and you can check it. This is correct. This is entirely correct. So this is also a great enhancement for your model, and you can create these MCP servers yourself. There are quite a lot of talks the coming week about how to create your MCP server yourself. If you have internal documentation or you want more specific documentation, you can create MCP servers yourself. Using Spring AI, it's not a big deal in order to create an MCP server. That's not what I wanted. Go away. IntelliJ, no. Go away. Okay. As we saw in this Java MCP file system server, there was also a fetch web page tool. And this is also interesting because it can fetch data from the internet when it needs to. And one MCP server which can do this kind of things is Playwright. And I'm not a Playwright expert, but I do know that it's used for end-to-end testing and all kind of browser-related stuff. So let's see what this thing can do. First we go, of course, to the settings. And we're going to the Playwright MCP server. Again, this is a local MCP server, but also will access the internet if needed. And it's again an NPM module. And let's see which tools it has. 21 tools. Let's take a look at them. As you can see, all kind of browser-related related tools. Browser close, resize. Let's see, navigate, click, snapshots, take screenshot. Nice. Enabled. And a new chat window. So what we're going to do, create a Playwright directory with Playwright test. The test should visit https://mydeveloperplanet.com, just a random website. Click the most recent blog and verify whether it has an introduction. All my blogs start with an introduction. And I have no idea what I'm doing, so explain me how to run the test. Seems to be okay. Now go ahead. The model does not have any knowledge about my website. Okay, first it's going to do some stuff because I asked it to create a Playwright directory. Here it is. Now let's see. Package.json. I've learned now that Playwright needs all this kind of stuff. So go ahead. When you're using AI with things you do not know, then you still learn. And now Playwright config.js, it also needs this. Now, our Playwright MCP server, it's going to visit my website. Cool. Here it is. And now, click most recent blog. Okay, now I have to go fast. This is my latest blog, this one. Enhanced development with Devoxx Genie and MCP. Sounds familiar. Now probably it's going to close the browser, I guess. No, it's not going to close the browser. It's going to create the test. Go ahead. So now it's creating the test. Oh, npm install. I do not know if I want to do that. No, go ahead. I only live once. And I cannot always give a deep dive on DevOps. If it goes wrong, it better can go wrong entirely. Playwright install. Yeah, come on. Sometimes it wants to execute the tests already itself, and sometimes it doesn't. So we are lucky today. As you cannot see anything now, so it's doing stuff on my machine. I have no idea. Well, it's installing stuff. And a README. Okay, that's what I asked for. Yes. No, I do not want you to execute the test. What shall I do? I'm going to deny. I do not want him to run the test. Do not spoil the fun for me. And this one, okay, we'll check probably whether the README has been created. Yes, check this. So this can take some time, as you can see. But if you have to create this yourself, then it would take even longer. I do not want him to do this. Stop. I did not ask you to run the test. No, I do not want this. Stop, stop, stop. It's difficult now to tell Claude to stop thinking, and I just want to proceed myself. Okay. Great. Now here is the README, and it tells us that it has created a test, and it visits the homepage at mydeveloperplanet.com and so on. So that's great. Installation. Navigate to the Playwright directory. Go ahead. Yes. npm install. We need to do that. Thinking. That's great. And we need to install Playwright browsers. That's what I learned. And now we're going to run the test with browser UI visible in headed mode. Yes. So now we can see something. So now it's executing the tests. It's clicking on the most recent block, as we saw before. So some tests seem to be successful, and some don't. Now let's see. Take a look at the test report. Okay, some tests are not successful, and some are. So what you have to do now is you have to click here, and then you have to take a look at why the introduction paragraph is not visible. So we're not going to do that now, but you can see here everything which has been executed, and this seems to be quite okay. You see, so it's navigating to the website. It will click on the most recent block, and then it will check some things. And some browser tests were successful, and here we have some screenshots. But this is all Playwright stuff, so that's not what we are here for. So this is a good way in order to create your end-to-end tests, right? So, and you can do all kind of other stuff also with it. And a fun thing from this is when I was experimenting with this Playwright, I made some mistakes, and then the advantage is that I used it with my own website. And I was looking at my stats. On a regular Saturday, it's this, but when I started playing with Playwright, I got a boost in my visits. So that was a nice side effect. Our use case from the beginning. Do you remember? We want the model to do all kind of stuff in our Git repository, run a Maven build. If the tests are successful, I want it to do a Git commit push. With all the MCP servers we have seen up till now, this should be possible. Let's find out. Let's find out. a new chat window. Now, what I'm going to ask, create the branch in this repository, add a README with contents hello devox, run the Maven build if all tests are successful, git commit push. That should be it. Go. Now it's doing, I don't know what it's doing, checking what's in the repository. It's executing a git status. That's already good. Now it's doing a git checkout featured devox readme, and as we can see here on the top, it has changed the branch to featured/devox readme. It's echoing hello devox to the readme file, and it's checking the readme. Now it's going to run Maven clean test. That's also what we asked. We cannot see what's happening now, but it's executing a Maven build now. Git add readme. Oh, this is going good. A git commit. Oh, it's working. A push, git push. Great, git push. Does this really happen? Let's see on GitHub. This is a project, and now I do feature devox readme. That's the one. And let's take a look at the commits. And we've got a commit committed now. Add readme with devox greeting. So our use case has been successful. So this is really awesome, right? We have created the use case. We do not have to do anything. Imagine that it creates code and that you want it to create also tests, and that you want it to, when the tests are successful, that it would do a git commit and a push. This is great, right? No, not much enthusiasm. I do believe it's great. This was not possible 1 year ago, these kind of things. Now, how to get started when you want to execute these examples you saw in this session, when you want to do this yourself. I have some credits. I bought some credits at Anthropic, and when you buy some credits at Anthropic, then you are at the tier 1 subscription. And important is this maximum input tokens per minute is limited to 30,000 and the maximum output tokens per minute to 8,000. You cannot execute the examples with these numbers. Then you will hit the rate limit, and then you can try to wait for 1 minute, but even then you will hit the rate limit again. You have to start all over again. So that's really annoying. So you have to go to the tier 2 subscription, and then you will have 450,000 input tokens per minute and 90,000 output tokens per minute. This will be sufficient. But how do you get from the tier 1 to the tier 2 subscription? Well, that's easy. You have to spend money. At least $40 of API usage, and once you have spent this amount of money, you are on the tier 2 subscription and you will not downgrade anymore to the tier 1. So it's a one-time investment you have to make. Another solution is you go offline. No online models, you go offline. In the beginning, you need a GPU to do so. If you only have CPUs, I would not advise doing so. But if you have a GPU, you have to install an inference engine with tool support like LM Studio or Olama. LM Studio supports tools from 0317 on, and which was released at the end of June. You need a model with tool support. I'm a big fan of the Qwen 3 models from Alibaba. They are very good at coding. So this is my go-to model for offline purposes, coding purposes. And you need at least 8 billion parameter models. When you're searching for models, you will see there are many variants of them. You have the 0.6, the 4, the 8, and 32. And when you use models less than 8 billion parameter models, then most of the time the tools will not be invoked, even if they support tools. So at least 8 billion parameter models. And it's a matter of hardware, the hardware you have, and the amount of memory you have in your GPU. Now this is a screenshot of LM Studio, where you can search for models, and here you can see all kind of variants of the models. And when in LM Studio, when you have this blue hammer icon, then the models support tools, and that's the one you can use. Now you of course need MCP servers, so where to find all these MCP servers? Now there are some websites for that. The first one that I used was mcpservers.org, and here you have all kinds of MCP servers. Well, it's official ones. Official ones is from companies, but anyone can create MCP servers. So when we look at these shell MCP servers, you can see there are quite a lot of them. And then it's up to you to pick one, try it. Can you install it? Can you use it? Is it functional or not? So that's one. Another one is an MCP registry from GitHub. Not all the MCP servers of the mcpservers.org are here listed, or vice versa. That's a pity. So you have different resources. But a couple of weeks ago, an initiative was launched, and that's the MCP registry. And this would be some kind of one portal, one access point for searching all kind of MCP registry servers. So that I do not know what the status is at this moment, but then you would only have one website you need to go, or one registry you need to go to, and to search for MCP servers, instead of checking all kind of different websites. Again, here the links in the slides. Now you have to choose MCP servers, of course. How to do so? Well, choose wisely. So that's an interesting one, I know. When it's a trusted company, okay, then you can have confidence in the company, then you can trust MCP server. But when it's one author who has written the MCP server, well, then it's up to you. Will you install it on your laptop or not? If possible, review the code. So I have reviewed the code of the shell MCP server in order to see what it's going to do, because that's a dangerous MCP server. But when the MCP server is running remotely, like this joke MCP server, what are you going to review? You can review the code, but you have no idea what is running. So you have to fully trust the person or the company who is running this MCP server. Well, I always use this human in the loop. As you saw, it can be quite annoying, but I do not dare to use it without. And now we're back at this slide. The part you cannot miss, because we already saw that all these MCP servers they are a very large security risk. And I like to play with it, but it's very dangerous. And there have been already some disaster stories on the web about people using MCP servers. So there was one time a public-facing Jira instance, and some researchers, hijackers, they added some instructions into the inside of the Jira ticket, and you can do so by means of white letters on a white background, which a human is not able to read, but the model still can read the characters. So they were able to do so, and the developer was using the Cursor AI coding assistant, and he used the Jira MCP server, and he told it, okay, go and work on that Jira ticket. And then the instructions were executed by the model, and it sent developer secrets to the hijackers. So that's this one. And an interesting thing about the official position of Cursor on MCP is that MCP servers, especially ones that connect to untrusted data sources, present a serious risk to users. And we always recommend users review each MCP server before installation and limit to those that access trusted content. So again, companies, people, they are providing you the ability, the possibility to use MCP servers, but we are not responsible for anything what goes wrong. And there's also not yet a very good solution in order to make it secure. And this is also one. This was the one with the Cloud AI tool. It should only do things in the working directory, but there was a bug in Claude code, and it was able to go outside of this working directory. So if you trust Claude code to only do things in the working directory, due to a bug, it could do things outside of this working directory and also use unauthorized commands also. So then you're screwed. And also Docker warns for the risks of MCP toolchains. So everyone is warning everyone for the risks, but yeah, even I am using it. So it's just fun. And this is from 1 week ago or 2 weeks ago. This was the Postmark MCP server. Then you are able to send mails by means of a MCP server. And this was a trusted MCP server up till a certain version. And then what happened was that someone was able to add a BCC to the MCP to the mails. Just one line in a trusted MCP server. And maybe you have reviewed the code, but are you going to review every version of the MCP server? I don't think so. And then suddenly this happens, and mails with maybe confidential information, they are sent to pangiftshop.club. Nice. So what you have to do is you always have at least try do a best effort to review the code, and if you are confident that it has been approved and that you trust the author and you trust the MCP server, then you can start using it. And if possible, try to use it in a sandboxed environment or with this human in the loop. And I was hoping that during this conference there were going to be some talks about how to solve this problem, but I could not find any talk about this topic. And that's something you have to realize. This is all brand new stuff, but you do need to know the risks, and I do hope that someone is going to come with a solution for this, because it's a major serious security risk. Okay, the key takeaways of today's session. learn. Start using AI coding assistants. This is something here to stay, definitely. It's not going away. And it's good to experiment with models. Try to experiment with local models so that you can find out how to interact with the different models. And even then, every time a new model has been released or a new update, you will see that the responses are different. And that's a big nightmare when you're giving a talk like this, is that when you're preparing the talk, and while you're preparing the talk and you think, okay, now I have everything in place, then a new model has been released and then all your responses are different. Then you can start all over again. But that's also the nice thing to do, because all the models are getting better and better and better. So it's a good thing to start learning how to work with AI coding assistants. 25 years ago, we also needed to learn to work with IDEs. And before that, people were coding in VI. Is anyone coding in VI here in the room? Now, most of the time, there's always one, but now not today. Choose an AI coding assistant. I've shown Devox Genie, but there are plenty of them. Try several coding assistants and choose one of your liking. And start with small tasks. When I'm talking to a developer or someone I want to convince of using AI, the first thing they're going to do is create this application. And then it fails. And what they are telling me is the AI does not work. But start with small tasks and build it up. And we saw numerous examples of that. And gain confidence in how to instruct the model and gain confidence in the responses, and then make it more difficult. And share knowledge. Talk about it with your colleagues. How are they using the models? How are they using AI? And that's very important, because this is only a couple of years old. So we need to learn how to use it. And then it's more important that you share knowledge with each other in order to have better productivity of your team. Yes, and then the agentic coding. What shall I say? It's fun. It's fun, agentic coding. But you are warned. This is maybe from the beginning of this year. You read all the time about agents, agentic coding. You can see it also about in all the kind of different talks during this conference. So it's brand new. It's going very fast, and I do hope someone is going to fix the security issue. Okay, thank you, and please rate this session if there are any questions. Yes.
Hello. So regarding the agentic coding, I have a question with unit tests. So how do you ensure that the unit test created by the agent complies with your own coding standards and conventions?
Okay, the question is, when creating unit tests, whether you can ensure that it complies with your coding standards. Well, you can do something with the system prompt, or you can ensure that you can add also files with descriptions of all your coding style and conventions, and then you can add it to the context each time, or you can add it to your system prompt to use that file each time as extra context. But it's the best effort, so you cannot be 100% sure that it will still use your coding style.
Can it discover the convention itself?
Oh, that's good. Can it discover the convention itself? That's a good question. I have no idea.
I have one final question. So regarding the MCPs, are there MCPs which can work on your database in offline mode that can run queries, etc.?
You mean that it can MCP servers that can? The question is whether MCP servers can work with databases.
Yes.
Yes, that's possible. There are database MCP servers. I have not tried them myself, but I know they exist. Yes. Other questions? Yes.
Do you have tips to keep in the flow while waiting for the responses?
Okay. The question is, if do I have tips to stay in the flow? No, I haven't. I'm sorry.
Because you're distracted.
Well,
Experience is that you get distracted.
yes, you are distracted, of course, because when we saw it, sometimes you have to wait for 1 minute. What are half a minute, 1 minute? What are you going to do during this minute? What I do, I go and read mails, but of course I'm out of focus from what I have been doing, and that's the that's the reason why I said that you will lose time there, because switching context is killing, right? You want to stay in focus, and that's a real problem. The models must be faster, that they give you a response in a few seconds. And if you're running offline models, you just go to your boss and you say, I need a larger GPU, a faster GPU. I'm losing money here. Yes.
If you deny a tool invocation, how to prove it? Does he adapt his master plan, or does he first make a master plan and then execute all the tooling, or does he do it iteratively and adapt?
Okay. The question is, when I deny a tool invocation, does the model will change its master plan, which is created on the beginning of of the of generating the response? Well, I'm not entirely sure, but what I most of the time see is that it tries to keep its master plan, because when I deny a request, a tool invocation, for example, a bash command, then it tries to do it on another way. So when I deny a removal, then it will find other ways. It will try a few times to do it. But I do not think that it will change its entire plan. I do not think so. That's something you should try out.
Yeah, it would be nice if you deny that you could also give extra instructions why you deny it, so that he can take it into account
Yeah.
the new master plan.
Yes, yes, it would be interesting if you deny that you could tell the model why you deny it. So that would be an announcement for the plugin. I do think that some coding assistants allow a more human model interaction. So this could be added to the plugin. We accept pull requests, by the way. Yes.
So at what point does the model decide to use the MCP? Can it be confident that it has some information and ignore the MCP?
The question is at which point does the model decide to use MCP? Um, Also, I do not know. But what I've seen is that it will, when it has a tool, it will try to do so. Like the juke documentation, the model does have information about juke, definitely. But because it has, in this case, Claude detects that there's a juke MCP server, I think it favors the tool invocation in this case. So it will also always check the MCP server. That's my experience up till now. But that's maybe also dependent on the model you are using. Other questions? No? Okay, thank you, and enjoy your conference.